This is Capsule on liveandlimbo.com. My name is Sean Chin.
And I am Andreas Babiolakis. This is an adventure to music, film, and pop culture.
How's it going, Andreas?
It's been pretty good. How about yourself?
Very hectic, chaotic, not hectic, but like chaotic here at Live and Limbo. The Scott Wayland interview is still racking up views, and it's really bittersweet, but it's fascinating to see all the behind the scenes, like analytics and stuff that's going on. So that's interesting. That's new.
Well, that's good then. You can only head in the right direction with, getting ourselves out there. So,
Yeah, so
I
quickly,
mean,
what,
that's
what are your thoughts on this whole thing, Scott Wayland passing? You must have some history.
um, I used to really like Stone Temple Pilots when I was younger. I used to, I think a lot of Canadian teens and kids used to get these either the Much Dance or the Big Shiny Tunes compilations.
Yeah, I
I
had a
used to
few.
collect exactly. I used to collect all of them, and I remember it used
Really?
to
Okay.
boggle. Yeah, I don't know. It was something I did back then, and it used to boggle my mind how each Stone Temple Pilots song was so vastly different. I couldn't because I didn't actually check out the band in full at that point. I was confused, like how does Sour Girl sound nothing like Lady Picture Show or some of the other songs that were featured? And once I started to check them out, I realized, oh my goodness, these albums are so vastly different. And that was one of the first bands where I realized you could still sound the same, even though each album is insanely different because I didn't know stuff like that could have existed back when I was a kid. That was one of the first avenues of that nature that I ventured down. So I was kind of a fan of Velvet Revolver as well when I was getting into like my metal phase, my classic rock, hard rock metal phase, let's say. And while I was never in love with any of these bands, I could still tell that he was a versatile, talented vocalist, and it's it's a shame that we lost him early to
Hmm.
addiction. But um, I can't be the only one where I'm not a super fan, but I was still impressed by the different natures one man and one band could have taken.
Yeah.
So
The
it's
utmost
it's time
respect
lost.
for such a rich, diverse variety of music from one person.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you've been busy, hard at work, Andreas. This is December. This is pretty much your month at Live in Limbo. Every week, you will be releasing a top 25 list. And last, what, Monday, no, this week, you released the first of these lists, the top 25 songs of 2015. And then you will be releasing albums and films and performance ones over the next few weeks. So how was 2015 for music? Songs, not albums, songs.
Well, I will say, I'll get to songs in a second. For albums, it was almost too easy to find stuff. I had to cut maybe 15 to 20 albums because I just didn't have enough space. Like, I just thought of too many albums that were terrific. With songs, it was a little bit harder, not because it wasn't as good, but I'm also trying to I'm also trying to make my list less of look at these songs that I found in the year as I feel like I've been doing. I'm trying to strengthen my lists and actually maybe listen to like what actual singles are being used and why those ones are being used as opposed to some other songs in the album. Or let's see what different genres can bring to the table and why these are strong not just for me but within their genres, within radio and radio play, with these different audiences. I tried to change it up a little bit, and once I started doing that, I started to discover a lot more and what could have strengthened this list for a larger number of people. Now, it's probably more mainstream looking than any other song list I've done, especially for the site.
Just a
But
little, yeah.
yeah, I think it's also beneficial in that way because I know from my end that it's not a sign of laziness that I kind of just resorted to whatever was popular or out there. It was me entering a world I usually try to avoid, which is the radio. Uh, I try to avoid that and see how much I could do on my own and I don't know.
Maybe
I
that's
think
maybe that speaks for the music itself then. If you tried to avoid it but it still made it onto your list, that has those tracks had really something going for them.
yeah, exactly. Like you'll see that I didn't end up using the biggest Drake hits. I still ended up using one that isn't a single, but I did consider, running through the six and Hotline Bling, which is weird because I never thought I'd include Drake at all. He's not my cup of tea, but I don't
Right.
know. This year maybe things are
Yeah.
different.
All right. So
Um,
you got 25 big ones here, but we're going to keep this episode short and sweet. So you're going to tell us 25 to 11, and then we'll go in depth from 10 to 1.
okay, perfect. So um, here we go.
Take it away.
Okay,
I
number
wish I had some
25.
fancy music here, but no.
You have 25 songs you get to pick from. Is that not enough? No,
Yeah.
but
No, but like one of those top 25 songs of 2015. Oh, there, I just did it. Okay, go.
that was better than some of the ones I've heard. So there we go. Number 25. No, I'm not going to get you to do that. I'm kidding. Number 25. You Will Not Take My Heart Alive by folk harpist Joanna Newsom. Number 24. LA Hallucinations by pop revisionist Carly Rae Jepsen. Number 23, Wildest Dreams, the radio single by country turned retro pop singer Taylor Swift.
Yes.
Number 22, My Baby Don't Understand Me Anymore by newcomer Baroque pop stunner Natalie Press. Number 21, WTF, Where They From by my favorite comeback of the year, Missy Elliott featuring Pharrell Williams. Number 20, Gifts for the Earth by eclectic extreme metal band Deaf Heaven. Number 19, The Blackest Day by depressing songstress Lana Del Rey. Number 18, Crosswords by Animal Collective member Panda Bear. Number 17, Can't Feel My Face by Toronto's one of Toronto's biggest exports, let's say, The Weeknd. Number 16, There Are Too Many of Us by the small numbered band. Let's say there's only four of them. Blur. So there's not too many of them, I guess. Number 15, Hello. I don't have to introduce this one. Just Adele. I think we all know who she is. Number 14, You and Six by sentimentalist rapper Drake. Number 13, Quicksand by Iceland's actual biggest export, Bjork. Number 12, The Traveler by a band who has released two great albums this year, Beach House. Finally, number 11, Nobody's Empire by storytelling cynics Bell and Sebastian.
So, why did Adele cross the road?
So she could say hello from the other side.
Damn you, Andreas.
I've answered this before, just not on a podcast, but
Oh, that's a great one though. So wait, okay, so for me to reflect on that a little. So, Missy Elliott is your biggest comeback of the year, and not Lana or Adele.
no, Missy Elliott had to come back from years of suffering with Graves' disease, and she came back with a reminder that she has some of the best music videos we've seen in these last few years, let's say, and she came back with an absolute banger that
Mm-hmm.
broke the internet.
I
Not
agree.
because it was controversial or because it did something that was shocking. It broke the internet, and everybody watched it within like the few hours it was up because it was just pure artistic talent.
I think the music industry missed her very unique sound and even fashion sense, and like her wild music videos. That's been sorely missed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She's great at what she does. She still has it, and she was missed. She didn't leave the music industry or take a break because she was tired. She
Hmm.
did it because she was too sick.
Yeah.
So to see her come back with such strength, I mean, it's a great sign. It's a great sign of things to come.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. When did she like first kick back into the scene? Was that with Katy Perry at the Super Bowl? Was that her first appearance back?
I think she might have had some other
That's when I
appearances,
first
but
saw her come back.
yeah, I think that's when a lot of people first saw her come back because I was actually televised. I think she's had some appearances at some other shows earlier than this, but her first like big announcement that she was basically back in the scene was basically that because it was televised and
Yeah,
everybody could be talking about it.
exactly. So right before we get into the top 10, how many, like before you cut down to this 25 list, how many songs made it onto your list to the prior list, right? To before this one?
Well, to be honest, before I really crunched down and did, I guess, whatever I said I did earlier, I was actually struggling to get songs. But once I expanded and, checked every little corner of music that I could, um, whether it be popular or, things that I might have missed, a good chunk, I guess. I don't know, maybe double of what
Double,
I
yeah.
have.
I would assume finding the best songs of the year is significantly more harder than albums since each album has like what, 10 to 15 tracks.
Yes and no. There are many more songs. And the thing is, it's actually kind of harder to maybe pick one song for an artist. I try not to
Well, because
repeat
like a whole
artists.
album could suck, but it could have one amazing song that would make it on.
Yeah, exactly. But there's also like albums with many good songs. And I try to leave it to one song per artist, so it's got a lot of variety to it. I don't want to just put on like five Sufjan Stevens songs because they're all good. But
Yeah.
I try to vary it up a little bit, so that's also difficult. Um, I find it easier to cut down songs than albums though, because songs you could listen to it again and again and compare them easily because they're not nearly as long as
That's true
a
too.
40-minute album. With albums, it's like, okay, I need to put this one on and see how it speaks to me. And then this one, oh, damn it, I've got to go back to this one now and re-listen to it. That's already like 2 hours taken up.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. With that said, let's go into the top 10. Top 10, 15 songs of 2015. Take it away.
Number 10 is by the Baltimore weird, I don't even know what kind of pop this is, group Animal Collective with their very last minute submission to the year, a terrific experimental song, Floridata.
Yeah, like right at the end, November 30, as you said. So it's like this was probably released right when you were starting to begin your list.
Absolutely, yeah, it was
Do
like
you
once
hate
I
when
was
people do that?
no, I don't think I don't think they have to cater to journalists like myself.
You did mention
Sometimes
though that many outlets did try to release their list earlier, and maybe they got stabbed in the back now. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's been a competition where it's like, let's see who gets their lists out earlier, and we can make the biggest bang. Some lists haven't done this, like Pitchfork still hasn't released theirs, for instance. But Time, Consequence of Sound, um, Rolling Stone, all have been competing with one another to get this out as early as possible. Now, I think it's a good strategy for the artists because it almost frees the competition for them. Like, let's look at last year's Black Messiah by D'Angelo, which I'm actually going to feature on this year's list because it was released too late, so I couldn't have released it on last year's. And I'm not going to ignore an album that great. And neither are many other publications. When that got released so late, it didn't have to compete with any of the albums from last year. It was basically known as, "Oh crap, that's the album we left out and it was too good." And it basically dominated early January. Like everybody was talking about it, and it had its spins on repeat, and it basically dominated months that it wasn't even featured in.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great marketing strategy. I mean, let's look at some of the biggest releases of the last 2 years. D'Angelo with Black Messiah, and then Beyonce's self debut, or not self debut, self titled rather album.
Yeah.
Now, again, those were both released after a lot of publications had their lists done, and they made the biggest bang because they were no longer competition. They weren't trying to make these lists. But in the end, they ended up being reworked into these lists anyways because they were just too damn good. So it doesn't annoy me.
No.
Sometimes I feel like, damn it, I wish I could have included that. Like I remember Come Down to Us with Burial, which ended up being my song of the decade so far. It was released just too late for my songs of the year that year, and I did feel a little bit.
And you can
Uh,
always update the decade list at any time too, so that's fine.
well, I'm gonna
Yeah.
save it until the
Yeah.
decade actually finishes. Keeping these as time staples and
Yeah.
not constantly reworking them. If I had some master list of the favorite things I've ever heard, that would be ever changing, I think.
Okay. So let's get back to your top 10. So why was Animal Collective's Floridada there? Number 10. How did they break into the top 10?
Well, I did mention that it is an experimental pop song, but having said that, it's also one of their most a- accessible songs, let's say. It's
How is
very
it
to
better
the
than Taylor Swift?
well, the Taylor Swift song is lovely, yes, but Floridada, I mean,
How is
have
it
you had
better
a
than
chance to listen
Hello?
to it? Have you had a chance to listen to it yet?
Yeah, but still.
Well,
Hello from the. Oh, no.
what do you think?
I like it too.
Yeah, for what reasons?
I think, well, like as you said, it's a very. It's poppy, but like it's very weird. But like I wouldn't put it in my top 10. My top songs are very different than yours, but I do trust your musical taste. And I think for the most part it does match our audience. What
I
we're
think
trying
I,
to reach.
I think I'll ask you what yours are after we
Yeah,
go
I'm
through.
going to do that.
So perfect. Okay, so just because I'm curious now. Um, no, Floridada it's a very upbeat, catchy song that it's got a great retro feel to it, but the production is so crisp and just it's pounding, but at the same time you could hear every nuance, like it's not an overabundance, which we've seen Animal Collective kind of be guilty of before, especially with Centimeter Hertz, probably the most divided album critically. Um, it's got a lot of work put to it for such a feel good sing along song, and I felt like I had that song already stuck in my head after one listen. Like I remembered every little detail of it, which is very difficult for a song to do.
Yeah,
To
it
be
is very
that,
catchy. Yeah.
yeah, to be that immediately memorable, it's not that common to find nowadays. And it was just a great song, and it was enough for me to say, "Oh my god, when is Painting With coming out?" That's the name of the new Animal Collective album. When is Painting With coming out? And sadly, it's coming out in February. So now I'm feeling highly impatient for what could be one of my
Biggest albums.
yeah, the biggest albums of the year that I'm looking forward to, let's say.
Well, that's good. You have
And
something for next year already.
yeah, absolutely. Now, if you haven't heard Floridata yet, it's if you're scared of listening to Animal Collective because you've heard that they are a bit off their rockers, it's one of their easier songs to get into. It's a lot of fun. It's just a great example of a pop song being a little bit more than a pop song. It speaks more if you're looking for more, but at the same time, if you just want to have fun, it serves that need as well. It's very layered, but at the same time, very straightforward.
Very good. Number 9.
Number 9, we have another great newcomer this year. She made a big stink at Way Home, where a lot of actual artists said, they were surprised by her, and she's one of the most sought after newcomers of the year. The let's say the great girl rocker of this year, Courtney Barnett, with what a lot of people agree to be her best song of the year, "Pedestrian at Best."
This is in my top songs of the year too, so I fully agree with this.
It's in a lot of people's. It's in Rolling
How
Stones.
can you not like this song?
That's a good question. I can't really answer that because, well, I featured it in my top 10, I guess. But, uh, it actually topped some lists. I don't remember
Why do you
offhand which one.
think this song surprised so many people? What about the song did that? Because it's like a simple, straightforward rock song. That's kind of rare these days.
I guess. I think the thing is, even if you listen to Courtney Barnett's full album, it still is in a league of its own. Not because of its quality or anything, but a lot of other moments on the album aren't straightforward rock. They might dabble in different areas of alternative rock, from the 90s or the early 2000s. But the one song that sounded very much like it was influenced by, like Nirvana or even like like Pixies to some extent. Something that was influenced by the late 80s, early 90s grunge movement, while taking part in PJ Harvey or Hole or other female female rock centric kind of tracks from back then. You've Pedestrian at Best is basically, no pun intended, the best example of Courtney Barnett doing this. It's the most in your face, the most cynical, the most full of attitude. It's a straightforward song, and I guess like Animal
Yes,
Collective,
full
it's
of attitude. That's what I think makes a difference here.
absolutely. And I guess like Floridata with Animal Collective, Pedestrian at Best is a good example of being simple but not too simple. It's to the point, but you still can admire you know, some different accents that it might be displaying, like the way that the guitars kind of twirl, even though they're still playing straight up power chords, right? It's small little details like this that kind of make the song a little bit more than just a raw kind of song, even though it is what it is, and it's probably one of the better songs of that nature that I've heard in a really long time. I also love Courtney Barnett's lyricism. It's very poetic throughout the album, but especially with a song like this, it almost feels like you're losing at a battle of wits, which is sometimes very refreshing to hear in a song where you don't just hear somebody being, bitchy or rude or condescending. With something like Courtney Barnett or the song that we have here, especially, it feels like you're gracefully losing at a battle of smarts. And you know what? Sometimes that's part of the fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, number 8.
Number eight is a band that I really like, and I'm really waiting on their album still, especially because we have songs like this. I Can't Be Myself When You're Around by Chromatics. Now,
I love this song
Chromatics,
too.
oh, it's terrific. Chromatics started off as like a post punk group. Once they got reinvented by the different members that joined the group, especially producer Johnny Jewel, they ended up being a neo disco synth pop group that really took reins with the label Italians Do It Better, and they've had some great, again, neo disco, um, click based kind of synth pop, synth rock. Now, with the newest album that's supposed to have come out back in February, need I remind everyone? Dear Tommy, they're trying to take on a few different sounds. And with I Can't Be Myself When You're Around, we've got this great shoegaze almost kind of song that's very noise driven. It's very to the point. It carries a punch to it. It sounds like
It's very cinematic.
it is. And while while almost everything Johnny Jewels touched has tried to be cinematic, I think this is one of the finer examples of it actually being cinematic. Instead of it just being like a European romantic scene as he often paints with his music, this one feels like the running for the jet plane, you know, the thrilling scene where somebody's trying to find their loved one in the midst of a crowd of people. It feels like the ending of a movie almost, like the climax. And
Like Lost in Translation.
exactly, I could totally imagine that, which I think is a good example because Sofia Coppola did create Lost in Translation when she was finding yourself lost in the crowds listening to My Bloody Valentine. So I think that's a good example of modernizing the shoegaze sound for modern context, let's say. So
For shizzle.
that works. Well, okay. That works as well. But, you know, keep in mind, Chromatics have released a few singles or, flat out songs for this album so far. We have Camera, Cherry, um, Shadow. Shadow was another really good one in films and some other ones. And then we have this. So picking from those, or especially the ones that came out this year, which there were 4 or 5 of them, that was tough already. But then, just re-listening to this song after giving it a break for a while, because I actually made it my ringtone for a bit, so I had to, you
Really?
know,
That's a weird ringtone. It's kind of not alarming enough, though.
you don't think that beginning's alarming
Oh,
enough?
just the beginning? Okay. Yeah, I guess
It's
your
just
phone rings
it's
only for like 5 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the beginning alone is a bit shocking to I guess either wake up to or just have in public. But I digress. Revisiting it, I forgot just how meaningful the song was when it first came out. Like, yes, we've got this new album coming out. Listen to how driven this song is. And then we're here in December, and it's almost been a full year since Dear Tommy was supposed to have come out. But a lot of us are still waiting. Like the hype hasn't essentially died yet. But we're all still waiting, and at least we have songs that have lived throughout the year and they're still going on strong, especially this one. So, if anything, it's just made me more excited, but also a little bit sad that I can't hear this, what's surely to be a great staple of an album, in its context, because I'm sure it might be even stronger when it's with all these other songs.
Soon enough. Soon enough. All right, you're
Yes.
number 7.
My number 7 pick is by, let's call him another poetic lyricist on this list. The controversial yet highly acclaimed prodigy of hip hop, Earl Sweatshirt, with his song about betrayal and being backstabbed, Grief. This song was basically, when it was released as the first single, his album I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside could have been released whenever. And it's a great album as well. It's going to be featured on my list when that comes around. I guess it'll already be out by the time this is out, I'm guessing. Anyways, while the album is still very good, I don't think any of his songs ever stood a chance to Grief, which I think is probably the best thing he's touched, you know, in his entire career so far, despite the fact that it's still a young career. Now, Grief is it's like a wormhole of depression and angst and just complete and utter shock that people could just betray a person like this. And it shows the fact that he wants to be closed off and introverted. The production is both shoddy and great at the same time. Like, I've compared the reverb kind of sound in the background, like that fuzzy drone, to William Basinski's Disintegration Loops a lot. I've done that a few times now. But I think with good reason, because it feels like it feels like a singular sound basically caving in on itself and falling apart, which is really well done. And then you have the beat itself, which actually sounds like it was done within seconds on Fruity Loops or something, compressed and shared enough times and broken mid process that it sounds really glitchy, and like it doesn't sound purposefully glitchy, like somebody's trying too hard to create this track. It just sounds like it's a song that's had enough and it's falling apart on itself. And I think it's great. I think it's great that, one can achieve this kind of music when a lot of hip hop artists are trying to be like above and beyond and ambitious with their layering. This perfectly serves the mood that Earl Sweatshirt's trying to portray here, that he's basically on the brink of giving up because he's tired of people and he's tired of humanity and he's tired of everybody, failing him or deserting him.
And
It's
you got to see him
uh,
live too, right?
I did,
This
yeah,
year.
actually. Where a song like this live, it actually carries a very different punch. On
Was it
album,
more in live? Was it? Did you feel the depression more?
no, actually, the complete opposite. On album, Earl Sweatshirt feels like a contemplating, man, I am tired of everything kind of vibe as he's writing into his diary, and you feel his the sympathy for him. But live, it almost feels like a big screw you to the world, where it's like, yeah, I'm making it, I'm doing this. See, this is me, and I'm surviving this. So it's a lot more of a triumph live, whereas on
Hmm.
album, it just feels like a man who's had enough.
So would you say he's like an emo Drake? Drake?
I think Drake's an emo Drake, to be honest. No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say, we have a lot of contemplative rappers that, you know, dwell on their emotions more than, the common themes in hip hop. It's not an uncommon thing anymore, but I'd just say he's all sweatshirt.
All
I think
right,
he's kind of just doing his own thing.
cool. Number six,
Alrighty, so with number six,
which is not Drake.
well, I already said Drake's like
Yeah,
in one of the lower numbers, I guess. I should have made a number six. Oh, is that why you said
yeah,
that?
that's why I said it.
Oh, I thought it was just because we were talking about him. I get it now. Uh, anyways, no, it's not Drake. Number six is by an acclaimed folk rock, whatever you'd like to call him, artist that has taken, speaking of ambitions, taken big ambitions with his past music, but kind of just toned things down a little bit just to talk about himself with the new album Carry On Low. It is the title track from the album, Carry On Low, by Sufjan Stevens. Now, this was hard to pick. It was so hard to pick one song off of this album that could be taken off as a singular piece. Now, I didn't want to just go with the song that I liked the best because that ended up being a challenge. I didn't know quite what was the best song on the album because there are just too many great moments on this. Now, having said that, I eventually found a song that could be taken out of context enough while still speaking as great as it tries to, and that was the title track where, a lot of the other songs have, the stories that incorporate with one another. Like, he's talking about childhood here, he's talking about seeing his mother through his daughter here. If you don't know the concept of Carrie and Lowell, the album, basically Sufjan Stevens' mother passed away within the last few years. um I think he took some time off before recording this. I'm not quite sure if he just went in right away, but his mom passed away, and he wasn't really too close with his mother because she kind of left him when he was younger. She came back into his life, but she had problems with alcohol and schizophrenia and the medication to treat schizophrenia. So she was never fully there for him, even when she tried to be. And basically, when she passed away, he felt this kind of disconnect. And, you know, either because she wasn't mentally there or physically there, he never felt fully connected with his mother. And he felt it was a big, great loss. So that, along with all the other depressions he has in his life, including isolation and loneliness, the want to find a loved one, the sympathy he seeks through other people that he ends up admiring. There's a big sense of constant battle on this album, and this, a lot of these songs intertwine with one another thematically. Like, I need to preserve myself in this song so I could be there for my mother, but then in another song he'll talk about harming himself by cutting himself. And in one song he kind of looks up to God and says, I need help with this. And in another song, he'll talk about how he wants to crucify himself so he can't suffer anymore. Now, with this song, it's a standalone song, I would say. You see him painting a picture of the scenario when he's a child, just seeing his mom hitting the floor, being basically like unable to move because she's either drunk or like suffering too much from her schizophrenia and the medication that she's got to take that basically downs her too much. And it's a very frightening image. And I think the whole album, not just this song alone, is some of the best emotional painting within music I think I've heard in a very long time. I mean, I'm talking about decades. I mean, if you haven't heard this album yet, I think it is easily one of the most emotional albums I've flat out ever heard.
Wow.
So, I don't know, have you heard the song or
Yeah, I only listened to it when I saw your list.
what did you think?
It's depressing for me. I like the when you hear my list, it's more, like typical pop stuff.
I guess so, but yeah, I guess to briefly explain the song because I went too deeply into the album itself, let's say. I love the uplifting kind of banjo that starts off the song as if it's like a child looking at his mother with a fleeting sense of joy. But then as the song carries on, you have almost like death a death organ that
I do agree that you have a better taste in music than I do, which is why you're on the team, and that's why I make you make the list. So that's good.
well, thank you. But yes.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, like the death organ that kind of swallows the song up and ends up overtaking it by the end. I think is a great sense of orchestration. You know, he's worked with big collectives of string instruments, brass instruments, actual orchestras, before to create such ambitious music. But I think he's learned to capture that with as few things as possible now. So no, it's a terrific song.
Like there's quite a few artists and like music that you've and interviews that you did throughout the year where I'd never heard of them before and now I like them. Like the next
Yeah.
one, number 5, US Girls.
Oh yes, there we go. Number 5, U.S. Girls with I guess not a single, even though I don't get why it isn't a single. Sedge Knife. Now that was also a bit difficult to pick between one of her songs. I think it was different because Sufi and I've known before, and I was trying to see, okay, what's a great example of something that he can write or pull off. With U.S. Girls, I've never heard of Meg Ramey's product or project before this year, actually. So when I heard this, it was all new to me, and I said, okay, wow, okay, I've
How
never.
did you find this song? Said Knife.
Well, I heard the album
Yeah, well, where did
before
you
the
hear the
actual.
album?
I saw a few publications that reviewed it, and they gave
Cool.
it quite a good score.
So
So
she's
I was
not even
interested.
she's born in the US, but she actually lives in Toronto.
That is true.
Resides in Toronto, yeah.
That is true. I don't know. I'm sure people have done that before.
But like she should be called like Canadian Girls.
I think I think she's got a point beyond U.S. Girls, perhaps like the materialism
Yeah, I
behind
know. I get it.
that kind of
I
image.
get it. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you listen to the whole album half free. Like she's got this one skit where she's talking about a dream that she had with a friend over the phone, and basically the punchline is, you know, like men are taught to have esteem and girls aren't. So I'm guessing that that's part of the theme as well, which we'll get into once I get into albums. I
Yeah.
say, but no, back to this. It's probably the most explosive song in the album. A lot of her other songs are a lot more relaxed, easygoing. But Said Knife is really explosive, as I said. And it's not just a throwback to the 60s, it's also a throwback to, I guess, like the loud girl movement in the 90s, again, going back to Courtney Barnett's sound. And it's got a great power to it where it's not just dancey and a lot of fun to kind of move to, but it's also just a straight up great rock song, despite
I
the
think
fact that I
that's a
wouldn't
new
even
trend
classify it.
actually. I think that's a new trend. Like that
Uh,
that powerful woman rock song. And you said like women kicked our ass this year.
yes, they did, and I think for albums they did as well, which we'll get into once we get into that
Yeah.
list. But no, I mean, I don't think it's a new trend because we've had that before. We've had Cyndi Lauper, Joan Jett, uh,
Yeah, but that
had
was
Benatar.
before. Now this is now, like today. So we have people like Saint Vincent and like Slater Kenny and they're like kicking
Well,
ass.
Slater Kinney's been around
I
for a
know,
while,
but they've
actually.
like in the last year they really came back.
I don't think powerful girl music ever left because Slater Kinney, they took a break, but they still had albums in the 2000s. PJ Harvey still had albums in the 2000s. But I think it's it's just kind of come back with a full on force because you had bands like Speedy Ortiz and Waxahachie
Yeah,
of milling in the midst, but this year, you had, and you'll see this with my albums
like
list.
heavy
Yeah,
punches, like pew, pew.
exactly. You saw all of these artists releasing stuff within the same year. So now it's come back with a vengeance, like all of these acts. So yeah, U.S. Girls just definitely has a place there where said knife is strong vocally. It's got a prowess to it with its guitar lines. Like it's a great anthemic song, and I think U.S. Girls, that album and this song are probably some of the most overlooked things of this year. If you haven't heard it yet, please give it a listen.
And cool. Number 4 is
Number four is again another person that needs little introduction. He's leading the way with Grammys this year, rightfully so. I think this is one of the few times that within recent years that the mainstream and the critics are fully agreeing that this is easily one of the best things released this year, if not the best released album or song or anything this year. We've got again, no introduction needed. Kendrick Lamar's powerful protest to Black of the Berry.
King
Now,
Kendrick Lamar.
basically, yes, he's somebody I would call king
You know,
easily.
actually, I'm super like at Way Home where we got to see him live. I was, I had like the chance to either go in the photo pit or hang out with you in the front row. Like we went. Did we go like an hour early or half hour early to be in the front there?
Like more like an hour and a half early.
Hour, yeah. And I think that was totally worth it. Sarah Ricks went to go in the photo pit anyways, so that's fine. But I wanted to see the whole show for myself, and I am very appreciative that I stayed with you there.
Yes, I'm actually speaking of which I'm gonna date this and say I've still got to fill out my end of the year list that Sarah's asked us all
Which
to
is doing like
take.
2 days.
Yes, from now anyways. But
Yeah.
yes, I will get to that.
I remember
But
you like screaming lyrics at me, but I was really enjoying it.
well, if you couldn't tell from then, I'll just flat out tell you now that that's probably going to be my number one concert of the year. I mean, that
Yeah,
was
oh,
really,
concert of the year. Okay, yes. Okay.
absolutely. But back to this, the Black of the Berry when it first came out. Need I say more? It basically crushed everybody the second it came out. Everybody was talking about it, how great the beat was, how strong the lyrics were. That twist ending, I mean, it basically changed the song after the first time you listened to it. That's a great thing about a song like this. The first listen will always kind of sit by itself, which you can say for every listen that you basically have with a song, but this is different. This is like you've watched a movie with a twist ending, and now you've got to rewatch it and see if you could have foreseen this ending all along. You have Kendrick Lamar basically repeating that he's going to be the biggest hypocrite of 2015, which I don't think that. I'd say people like Donald Trump and Martin Shkreli kind of take that title, but no, he basically proclaimed himself the biggest hypocrite of 2015, and he goes into all of these things that African Americans have to put up with, stereotyping, the need to push themselves even more to make it into the world. And he talks about all of these things that his culture is suffering from. But then he ends off the song by saying that he's killed one of his own. Now, it's unknown whether he's saying that it's a character that he's portraying that killed another person, if he's referencing back to Good Kid, Mad City, where they partook in actual crimes on that album, or if he's talking about somebody of his own culture that maybe accepted the stereotyping or accepted the fame that came with his rapping and forgot about his heritage, where he basically lost his roots. Now, whatever ending you want to interpret, it basically changes the song from every subsequent listen you will ever have of it.
How did
So
you
you'll
interpret
always.
it?
How did I personally interpret it?
Yes.
A man being separated from his roots and forgetting who he is through his identity, which I believe, especially in context of the album, because a lot of the time he's talking about running back home, seeing how his city's been divided and how it's been changed. You know, the homeless man he sees and the interaction he has with them. He's learning more about his roots. That's why a song like "I," which comes later in the album, talks about like us looking past gang colors and just seeing us as humans. People who share a culture. So that's what I personally believe that it is.
Hmm.
But I think it's open to anybody's interpretation. Either way, I think everybody was pretty much blown away once that final line of the song was delivered because it completely transformed what the song represented on its first listen. So I think that's quite a feat to pull off.
Awesome. And number three, we're getting into the big three. Here we go.
Big three. Alrighty, here we go. Number three is by an artist that is doing Toronto proud. We have a few
Canadians.
or yeah, we have a few Canadians or Canada proud, let's say. We have a few Canadian groups that are within like the last few years really representing our country very, very well. Like an example is always. I'll just mention them because I saw them yesterday. But another example is this eccentric, childlike yet very mature synth pop singer Grimes, which I'm sure everybody knows by now. She's headlined festivals at this point. She's opened for big names like Lana Del Rey at this point. She's really made it, and now she's also faced the controversies of the masses kind of getting upset that she's going more pop when she released the song "Go" last year, even though she was kind of always pop, I would say, which I also said in my review as well. But to go back to this, she released an album that was even poppier than we could have even imagined, but it was great emphasis on the fact that she's a great producer, a great songwriter, and just a flat out great versatile singer. But I think one of the best songs, if not the best song on that album, that title ended up going to Flesh Without Blood, which is one of the main singles off of it. And I think a lot of people would agree that this is the quintessential pop song of the year.
I would
It's
agree.
Oh my goodness, no, it is.
It's great. I saw the music video when it first came out, like in the first day. I was like, whoa, this is cool.
No, it's just a terrific song. It's not just full of hooks, it's full of great production as well. It's
Oh,
full
yeah.
of great ideas. It's full of lyricism that isn't just straightforward.
I
It's
forgot where I read it, but it somewhere said that she is like one of the best producers right now, like female producers and best producers overall.
I'd agree with that. This is fully the product of somebody who's fully in control.
Yeah, like there's singers and like she's actually a producer first and foremost, and then she sings on top of it as well.
Yep, absolutely. And you could definitely tell with this song where the vocals aren't shoved to the forefront, even though they could be, because on Art Angel she fully exploited how good her vocals really are, unlike any time she's ever has before. And again, back with this song, it's full of hooks, but it's also full of textures that make it more than just your average pop song. Some of the things that we would have seen earlier on this list, which doesn't make them bad songs, of course, because why would they be featured on the list like this? But it just shows why something like Flesh Without Blood might go the extra mile, even though it's not like changing your views of society or being very deep. It's still a straightforward pop song, but it just shows that there's still some magic left in the tank. When everybody's quick to give up on music and say that there's no creativity anymore.
There's
You know,
Grimes.
there's Grimes,
Yeah.
which proved with like 11 or 12 songs on one album that you can still go outside the boundaries of pop a little bit without being too weird.
Yeah.
And there's just still some creativity left within the basics of pop music, and this is a great example of that. Plain
Love
and
it.
simple.
Number two.
Number two is a little bit more of a thinking track. You've had Tame Impala's songs in the past diving into psychedelia and, well, I guess you could say the same thing with Currents, but instead of looking at like the retro songs of the 60s and 70s that ventured down drug inspired venues with um I guess guitar driven rock songs. Courage was full of the 80s more straightforward, I would say, more straightforward poppy stuff, except for a song like Let It Happen, which probably took or opened Currents up rather with some of the biggest twists and turns that the album basically faces. You know, it is a solid album, but it's one that starts off with such a bang that it's the biggest impact you'll have throughout the entire album, and almost this year, actually. Let It Happen. What are your thoughts on the song?
I like this song a lot too because this is another band that I kind of got into because of you, Dakota, and Sarah's recommendation. And
Yes.
like you guys have covered their shows here, and then I listened to their music after, and I really like this one too. As you said, it's a the beats, the heavy beat, and the soundscapes are very not emo, not emo's the wrong word. I keep using that. It's more deep. Like it's more you really have to think with this one.
Yeah, with Let It Happen, which actually ended up making a lot of lists, which I'm glad. I'm glad that it's being recognized. Let It Happen is an ever-changing song that doesn't necessarily melt into each segment that it has. Like, it stutters a lot, but it still feels fluid enough to make that work.
Again, this is
Now,
not one that would go in my top three, but yeah, I can see the artistic merits for it.
oh, it's a great song, Sean. Come
I know
on.
it is a good song. It just wouldn't be in my top three.
Oh, I think you haven't heard it enough. Then I think you've got to put it on some repeats after this, and come back to me.
You're
Now,
gonna laugh at me when you hear my songs.
no, it's everybody's different
Yeah.
taste. You're allowed to like whatever you like, of course. Now, Let It Happen. I love the fact that it basically it segues into different parts by repeating, as if it's like a record on skip or an album that's basically skipping, I guess. And again, it stutters into each movement, but like it feels like a fluid change, and it fits thematically perfectly because the whole album and this song as well basically talk about you know Kevin Parker's aging while kind of clinging on to the past, and he can't control the way that he changes. And you can feel the song gripping on its former self while it gets shoved into the next segment of the song. You know, it's a very self-aware production here, and never mind just that and how clever it truly is with its composition. It's just a flat out catchy,
Yeah,
explorative song, and I don't know, it's a journey from start to finish, and it's terrific.
I agree. And so before we get into your number one song of the year, I'll tell you my top three that will be on Sarah's survey. So my third one is Energy by Drake. What do you think about that one?
It's not a bad song actually.
I think this one's great because this one is like he's at like the pinnacle of his career. And then when you're at the top of something, everyone tries to take you down from the top. But he's like, I don't give a shit anymore. I'm just going to keep going forward.
Yeah, no, it is a pretty solid song. I'm glad, even though Hotline Bling is a good song, I think that's been too many people's go-to option for Drake this year, especially when I think he's got a lot of other songs that are worth mentioning. And
Yeah.
while Energy was overplayed back when it first came out, I think it's one that's actually, oddly enough, forgotten since this whole Hotline Bling thing came out. So I'm glad it's been mentioned, I
And
guess.
it's not like super radio friendly either, like a typical mainstream song.
I think it kind of is, but
Oh,
that doesn't mean it's a bad thing,
yeah.
though.
Number two of mine was Pedestrian at Best by Courtney Barnett.
Oh,
Again, we
wow,
talked
okay.
about this, yeah. Like she actually was in the when I was taking photos of Viet Cong at way home, and then I looked over to my side and she was just in the pit as well, wearing a baseball cap. I'm like, whoa, is that Courtney? Wow, beside me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was in the photo pit. This was at the small way away stage for
I must
Viet
have been
Cong.
right there then,
Yeah,
because I
you
was just in
probably
right
were
front.
like right behind her.
I didn't even notice. Wow,
There's
weird.
a photo somewhere. I'll show you later. She's wearing like a baseball cap.
That sounds like her at least. So,
Yeah. And my number one song is Lean On by Major Lazer.
and
Oh.
if it's what you love, it's what you love.
You know, like people, I always found Diplo to be super enigmatic, and there's something like super, I don't even know what to call it, just something that
Perplexing.
I gravitate to. And so I really wanted to see him for a long time, but I really did not want to go to any EDM festivals, which is where you kind of have to go to see him. And so this year, the opportunity and some circumstances happened, and some falling outs where I got to attend the Mad Decent block party in
Oh,
Toronto.
okay.
So with Dakota, so I finally
Yep.
got to see him there and take photos of him, and it lived up to like the hype. But it was really, really not my scene, our scene, I would say. But I got to finally see him. I don't know this track. I don't know what about this track, but like I every single day, I this plays in my head at least 3 times.
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. Do you not like this song?
No,
And it features
I think
Danish singer Moo, whatever. Mo.
I would attempt that just to be safe, but um, I think it's a pretty good song. I don't think it would have made my list. Well, it didn't, obviously, but
It's incredibly catchy. And it's like the
I don't,
perfect summer track.
I don't know though. I think I already got that beat with my number one.
What
But
what is that? What is that sound called? You know, like is it like a tropical? You know what I'm talking about? Like what makes that song?
it
That
could be tropical or exotic, you know,
I don't know if that's like a synth or what.
like a sense. I think I know what you're talking about, where you can kind of attribute different senses to a song.
Yeah, like I just picture that song like the best when the sun is setting on a beach.
Yeah, no, I know fully what you're talking about. I think actually electronic music can really capture that a lot. I don't know why, maybe because they have more sounds at their
Do you
disposal.
not like Diplo?
I'm like a big fan, I would say.
Why do you think I'm so gravitated to him? Am I crazy?
I guess because it sounds summery, as you said. I
Oh, okay,
guess
that's good. All right, so let's get back to your top 25 songs of the year. This is number one.
number one, which actually
Actually, you
feels
should try say that. You'd probably sound better. You have a deeper voice than me. Go for it
number one
with the echo.
on. on.
Okay,
It was a delayed echo because we were in it. We were in a big valley, so it took me time to toss some
that's
stuff
right.
around. But this is quite a summery track as well, even though it came out in March. I think it's a song that basically carries its own weight throughout the entire year, and it's one that I definitely could not forget about from the very first time that I heard it. It's by the young talent and whiz kid, I would consider Jamie XX, who is of course from the indie band XX, but he's doing his own thing here, and he basically came up with an electronic album from each little time he had between sets while he was touring, or the little time he had in between recording albums with the XX. Now, considering that, I'm completely flabbergasted that his album is just so damn good because a lot of people's on the road albums, they might sound like what they are, but this sounds like this man sat in a studio for 5 years straight and just recorded this thing because it is so textured. It is so colorful. No pun intended, I guess. It is just so multifaceted that each song carries its own full story of emotions, memories, nostalgia, human existence, basically. You just feel all of the years of your life within each song of his on his debut, or I guess like his complete solo debut, because well, he did an album with Gil Scott Heron before. But having said that, to pick one song off this album was also tough. But once
Have,
I gave it a few more listens, I ended up finding the song that stuck out the most. I would say it's "Loud Places," which actually features Romy from the XX. Actually, what do you think of this one?
oh, I love this song too. I love the album in color, and I think this is the best song on it as well. Did you get to see him live this year?
No, I signed up for it, but I think there was tough competition because I think
Oh,
other people
yeah.
got
I got
got
to
ahead
see
of
him
me.
at
But
Festival. I think you were supposed to go to Festival too.
I was supposed to, but I was unable to at the end. So
You
it's
missed
okay.
you
I'll
missed him twice.
basically I'll end up catching him next year, though.
This song is great. I think it's probably yeah. You know, like the summer tracks, like track of the summer, is a very debatable thing. So I think it was like between for me, it was between the Diplo song, Lean On, and what, The Weekend. And I think Walk the Moon was kind of there too with different colors. But then this one was Loud Places by Jamie XX was the cream of the crop. Creme de la crop.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's not even from the summer. Again, it's from March. So
No, but it
the
has
fact,
that sound.
oh yeah, no, it definitely does. But the fact that it basically applied itself without having to be released in the summer, I think is a good sign. And again, it's one that I just couldn't shake off the entire year. And
It's
it's
haunting.
all
It's a summer dance song, but it's haunting at the same time.
it's optimistically haunting. Like you don't feel like you're scared. You just feel like you're being hugely affected. You know, you're hearing like the backing vocals that basically sound like the retro sounds Daft Punk might dabble in. I can't even tell if it's a sample or if it's recorded singing. I can't tell, but the way it's implemented within the song, you know, it sounds like something that Daft Punk might have used with like their retro samples. Romy's lead vocals aren't the typical European house vocals you'd get with a pop singer, where they're very animated or live. You know, it's a lot more subtle and within itself. So it doesn't feel like she's screaming at you or trying to fit in with the liveliness of the electronic backing behind her. You know, it makes the production so much louder because her voice isn't loud. It feels like you're stuck within a massive room with all of these sounds attacking you from all angles while you're having this one-on-one conversation. It is a great contrast being used here, and you have so many house elements from different eras, like the '90s, the 2000s, now, but they all fit in perfectly within this watercolored massive artwork here. I don't even know what to call it. It's a tapestry. It's a mosaic of sorts. It's all of these different art forms where you could piece things together, whether through actual literal pieces or stitches or just colors blending together. Just all of these different ideas melting within one another and being not existing as separate pieces, but only unified within one congruent or final product that we have here.
It's definitely the song of the year. So, overall, Andreas, great list.
Thank you.
I think it was really, really well done. And I think we can look forward to, well, we will look forward to your top albums of 2015 next week. Podcast to come after that soon. I don't know. It's coming to the end of the year and we have to figure out which podcast goes where, but we will have a year end wrap up as well, trying to get
Perfect.
the editors together like we usually do. And then for your top films and performances, I think I will leave that to your you and Dakota's Contra Zoom, actually.
We're actually looking into that. We're actually coming up with a way to combine the two, maybe into one episode or two. But we're gonna also get Dakota's picks from, I guess, from his side of things over at ContraZoom. So no, it should be exciting.
Absolutely. All right. Where can all of our listeners find you, Andreas?
You can follow me on Twitter at Andreas Babs.
Great. And you can find myself on Twitter at Sean Chin. Please follow the show at Live in Limbo and use the hashtag Capsule Podcast to join in on the conversation. Please subscribe to our show in iTunes. Give us 5 stars and leave us some nice words in the review section. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Live in Limbo TV. And as always, you can find the show notes at liveinlimbo.com/capsule. Take care.
Have a good one.